Lori Williams stood outside the attic door of her 40-room mansion, confused. She could hear her 8-year-old son, Robin, talking. But to whom? There were no other children. The staff was downstairs. Her husband was traveling for Ford Motor Company, like always. She pressed her ear to the door and listened. Robin wasn't just talking. He was having a conversation with himself. Dozens of voices, British accents, southern drawls, high-pitched squeaks, deep, authoritative tones. He was giving each of his 2,000 toy soldiers a different personality, a different life, a different story. She opened the door. Robin looked up at her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her blood run cold. Her son wasn't playing. He was surviving. The survival mechanism he'd invented in that attic, creating crowds to fill the silence, would one day make millions laugh. But it would also ensure that Robin Williams could never, ever be alone. 1959, Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. The Williams estate sat on 3 acres of perfectly manicured lawn in one of Detroit's wealthiest suburbs. 40 rooms, 12 bathrooms, a ballroom that hadn't been used in 5 years, hallways so long your footsteps echoed. And in the third-floor attic, surrounded by dust and shadows and forgotten furniture, an 8-year-old boy spent entire days alone. Robin McLaurin Williams was an only child, not by choice but by biology. His mother Lori had complications after his birth, no more children, so Robin grew up in a house designed for a large family with only himself to fill it. His father, Robert Fitzgerald Williams, was a senior executive at Ford Motor Company. Important man, busy man, gone man. He traveled constantly, Detroit to Chicago, to New York, to Cleveland, and back. 2 weeks home, 3 weeks gone. That was the pattern. Robin learned early not to expect his father's presence. His mother, Lori, was different. She was there, physically. A former model, beautiful, sharp-witted, with a cutting sense of humor that could slice through any pretension. But being present wasn't the same as being available. Lori Williams had a social calendar that would exhaust a politician. Garden club on Mondays, charity luncheon on Tuesdays, book club on Wednesdays, dinner parties, fundraisers, gallery openings, country club events. She was the wife of a Ford executive. That came with obligations, appearances to maintain, a role to play. And Robin? Robin had one rule drilled into him from the moment he could understand language. Children should be seen, not heard. This wasn't cruelty. This was 1950s upper-class parenting. Children were accessories, not participants. You dressed them nicely, brought them out for important occasions, and the rest of the time they stayed quiet and stayed out of the way. Robin learned this lesson perfectly. He was the model child, polite, quiet, self-sufficient. The staff called him Little Ghost because you could go entire days without knowing he was in the house. The attic became his world. It was the only space in the mansion that was truly his. Nobody went up there. Too dusty, too cluttered with old furniture and forgotten belongings from previous owners. But for Robin, it was perfect, private, safe, his, and he filled it with soldiers, 2,000 toy soldiers, green plastic army men mostly. Some were cowboys, some were knights, some were spacemen. He'd collected them over years, Christmas gifts, birthday presents, allowance purchases from the 5 and dime. They were arranged across the attic floor in elaborate formations, entire civilizations, complete with cities, battlefields, kingdoms, and space colonies. But Robin didn't play with them the way other children played with toys. He didn't just move them around and make explosion sounds. He gave them lives, every single one. Private Jenkins from Tennessee, scared of combat, but brave when it mattered. General Worthington with the British accent, stern but fair. Captain Rodriguez, the hothead with the quick temper. Corporal Murphy, the Irish soldier who missed his family. 2,000 soldiers. 2,000 complete personalities. 2,000 voices. The staff thought he was reading or napping up there. They had no idea what he was actually doing. They'd bring him lunch on a tray, leave it outside the attic door, come back 2 hours later to find it empty. Never a sound from inside, never a complaint, never any trouble. The perfect child. But on a Tuesday afternoon in October 1959, something broke the pattern. Lori Williams came home early from her charity luncheon. The event had been canceled, some issue with the venue. She walked into her silent mansion, took off her gloves and hat, and for the first time in weeks, she had an unscheduled afternoon. No obligations, nowhere to be. The house was so quiet. Too quiet. Where was Robin? She checked his bedroom. Empty. The playroom downstairs, empty. The library. The sitting room. The dining room. Empty. She asked the maid, who said Master Robin was upstairs, always upstairs, in the attic. Laurie frowned. How long had he been up there today? The maid shrugged. Since breakfast, 6 hours, alone. Laurie climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. She'd been up here maybe twice in the 8 years they'd owned this house. It was staff territory, storage, forgotten space. As she approached the attic door, she heard something that stopped her. Voices. Multiple voices. Coming from inside. Her first thought was that Robin had snuck friends over somehow, violated the rule about guests without permission, but no, that was impossible. No cars in the driveway, the staff would have told her. She pressed her ear against the door and listened. And what she heard made no sense. I don't want to fight today, child's voice, high-pitched, trembling, scared. You don't have a choice, soldier. Orders are orders. Deep voice, authoritative, military, British accent. But my wife just had a baby. I need to get home to them. Different voice, southern accent, desperate. We all have families, Rodriguez. That doesn't change the mission. Another voice, Spanish accent, calm but sad. Incoming! Take cover! High-pitched shriek, panicked. Laurie's hand froze on the doorknob. Was her son listening to a radio program? But no. The voices were too immediate, too varied, she realized with a shock, too much like her son's voice. All of them. Every single voice was Robin. Just Robin. Doing different accents, different pitches, different personalities. She turned the doorknob quietly and pushed the door open just a crack. What she saw took her breath away. Robin sat cross-legged in the center of the attic floor, surrounded by a sea of tiny plastic soldiers. They were arranged in intricate formations, battalions, platoons, whole armies facing each other across the dusty wooden boards. Robin held 2 soldiers, one in each hand, moving them slightly as he spoke. I'm sorry, Jenkins. I'm so sorry. Robin's voice cracked, high-pitched and emotional. He was crying, actually crying, tears streaming down his 8-year-old face as he spoke in the voice of one dying soldier to another. Tell my boy I loved him. Tell him I... The voice broke off. Robin set down that soldier, laying it flat, dead. He picked up another soldier, British voice again. Jenkins was a good man. We'll make sure his family knows. Then another soldier, Irish accent. Aye, the best of us he was. Another, French accent. His sacrifice will not be forgotten. Laurie's chest tightened. This wasn't play. This was something else entirely. Her son wasn't imagining battles. He was imagining relationships, families, grief, loss. He was creating an entire world of people who cared about each other, who remembered each other, who mourned each other. Why? Why would an 8-year-old need to invent 2,000 relationships? And then she understood. Her son was lonely, crushingly, devastatingly lonely. He'd been alone in this attic for 6 hours today. How many days had it been like this? How many weeks? How many months had she been so busy with luncheons and charity events that she'd never once asked what her son actually did up here all day? She pushed the door open fully. Robin's head snapped up, his eyes wide with fear, like he'd been caught doing something wrong. The tears on his face were still wet. For a moment, mother and son just stared at each other, and in that moment, Laurie Williams saw something in her son's eyes that broke her heart. Shame. He was ashamed of being caught, ashamed of needing these toy soldiers, ashamed of being lonely. Robin, she said softly, how long have you been up here? I don't know. His voice was small, his real voice, not the character's. Since breakfast, I think. Has anyone come to check on you? Robin shook his head. No, ma'am. But that's okay. I'm not supposed to bother anyone. That sentence hit Laurie like a physical blow. I'm not supposed to bother anyone. That's what her son had learned. That's what she and Robert had taught him, intentionally or not. Be seen, not heard. Don't be a bother. Stay quiet. Stay out of the way. She walked into the attic, carefully stepping over the arranged soldiers, and sat down on the floor next to Robin. Her expensive dress would get dusty. She didn't care. "Tell me about them," she said, gesturing to the soldiers. Robin looked uncertain. "About who?" "Your soldiers. You were talking to them, or they were talking to each other." She picked up one of the plastic figures. "Who's this?" Robin hesitated, then his face lit up slightly. "That's Private Henderson. He's from Texas. He's scared of the dark, but he volunteered for night patrol anyway because his best friend, that's Corporal Davis over there, was afraid to go alone. Henderson talks real tough, but he writes letters to his mama every week." Lori felt tears prickling her eyes. Her 8-year-old son had given this plastic toy soldier a personality, a backstory, relationships, fears, and courage. "And this one?" She picked up another. "General Worthington, British. He lost his son in the last war, so he's really protective of his soldiers now. He tries to be strict, but he actually cares a lot. He gives the men extra rations when he thinks nobody's looking." "Robin," Lori said quietly, "how many of these soldiers have stories?" Robin looked down at the floor. "All of them. All of them. There must be 2,047. Robin's voice was barely a whisper. "I've been counting. 2,047. Her son had created 2,047 complete personalities. 2,047 voices. 2,047 friends. Because he didn't have any real ones." "Do you," Lori's voice caught, "do you do this every day?" Robin nodded. "When you're at your luncheons and Daddy's traveling, the staff says I'm very good at entertaining myself." Entertaining myself. That's what the adults had called it. What a good boy, so independent, so self-sufficient. They'd praised him for not needing attention, and Robin had learned that lesson too well. He'd learned that his needs didn't matter, that wanting company was a bother, so he'd created his own company. 2,000 personalities that would never leave him, never be too busy, never tell him to be quiet. Lori put her arm around her son and pulled him close. Robin stiffened at first. Physical affection wasn't common in the Williams household, but then he melted into her embrace and started crying. Really crying. Deep, shaking sobs like he'd been holding them in for years. Maybe he had been. "I'm sorry," Robin gasped between sobs. "I'm sorry I'm crying. I know I'm supposed to be quiet." "No." Lori held him tighter. "No, sweetheart. You're supposed to be a child. You're supposed to play and laugh and make noise and have friends and—" Her voice broke. "I'm so sorry, Robin. I'm so sorry we made you feel like you had to be quiet." They sat there on the attic floor for over an hour. Lori asked Robin about different soldiers. He told her their stories, doing all the voices, all the accents, and despite her heartbreak, Lori found herself amazed. Her 8-year-old son had a gift. The way he could shift between voices, between personalities, between entire characters. It was extraordinary, but it was also tragic, because this gift had been born from survival, from loneliness so deep that a child had to invent a civilization just to have someone to talk to. After that day, things changed. Not completely. Robert still traveled. Lori still had obligations, but she started coming home earlier. She started checking on Robin more. She started taking him with her sometimes, to the movies, to the park, to lunch at the country club, and she started making him laugh. She'd always had a sharp wit, but she'd rarely used it with Robin. Now she did. She'd make sarcastic comments about the other society ladies. She'd do silly voices. She'd be playful. And Robin responded. When his mother laughed, when she paid attention to him, when she engaged with his humor, that's when he felt seen, valued, important. It was the best feeling in the world, and without realizing it, Lori Williams was teaching her son a dangerous equation. Your worth is measured by how much you entertain others. If you're funny, you matter. If you're quiet, you disappear. Robin carried that lesson into adulthood. He became one of the greatest comedians of all time, capable of doing hundreds of voices and characters. He could fill any silence, any room, any stage. People marveled at his energy, his speed, his endless creativity. What they didn't know was that it wasn't just talent. It was survival. The same survival mechanism he developed at 8 years old, alone in an attic, creating crowds to fill the crushing silence. In interviews decades later, Robin would talk about his childhood, but always with humor, always making it a joke. I was an only child, so I had to invent friends. 2,000 little plastic friends who never said no to my ideas. The audiences would laugh. But if you looked closely at his eyes when he said it, you could see the truth. He wasn't joking. He was confessing. The staff at Juilliard noticed it first. When Robin arrived in 1973, his teachers were impressed by his talent, but concerned about his compulsion. He couldn't stop performing. Even in private moments, in the cafeteria, in the practice rooms, he was always on, always doing voices, always entertaining. His classmate Christopher Reeve once asked him, "Do you ever just stop? Just be quiet?" Robin had looked at him with a strange expression and said, "I can't. When I stop, I disappear." That fear of stopping, of silence, of disappearing, followed Robin his entire life. It's why he took every role offered to him, why he said yes to every interview, every appearance, every opportunity to perform. It's why he struggled so deeply with being alone. Silence for Robin Williams wasn't peaceful. It was terrifying. It was that attic. It was being 8 years old and unseen and creating 2,000 friends because the real world didn't have any for him. His wife, Susan Schneider, noticed it in their private moments. Robin couldn't sit still. He'd pace. He'd do voices. He'd turn everything into a performance. When she asked him about it once, he said, "I don't know how to just be, Susan. I only know how to do." She understood then that the man the world saw, the manic, energetic, endlessly creative genius, was still that lonely 8-year-old boy, still trying to fill the silence, still trying to prove he was worth noticing. Lori Williams lived until 2001. She was 90 years old when she died. In her final years, when Robin would visit her in California, she'd sometimes apologize. "I should have paid more attention," she'd say. "I should have known you were lonely." Robin would hold her hand and say, "Mom, you did your best. It was the times. You didn't know." But they both knew the truth. Those years in the attic had shaped him. The survival mechanism he'd invented at 8 years old had made him famous, had made millions laugh, had touched countless lives. But it had also cursed him. Because once you learn that silence means abandonment, you can never stop performing. You can never stop proving you deserve to exist. In August 2014, when Robin Williams took his own life, the world mourned the loss of a comedic genius. But those who knew the real story mourned something else. They mourned the lonely 8-year-old who never truly escaped that attic, who spent 63 years trying to fill silence with noise, who believed deep down that if he stopped entertaining people, he'd disappear. Among Robin's belongings after his death, Susan found something that broke her heart. In a storage box in his office, carefully preserved, were 12 toy soldiers, plastic green army men from the 1950s. There was a note with them in Robin's handwriting: Private Henderson, Texas, General Worthington, British, Captain Rodriguez, Spanish, Corporal Murphy, Irish, and the others. My first friends. They never left me. Even after everything, the fame, the success, the real friendships, he'd kept them. The 2,000 had dwindled to 12, but he'd kept them, because they were the ones who'd been there when no one else was. Today, those 12 soldiers are in a display at the Juilliard School, in a case with a plaque that reads, "From the attic where a lonely boy created 2,000 voices to fill the silence. Robin Williams, 1951-2014. The world heard you. We only wish you'd known you never had to earn the right to be heard." If this story about loneliness, survival, and the price of genius moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they don't have to perform to be worthy of love. Have you ever felt like you had to entertain others to matter? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more true stories about the hidden pain behind the laughter and the children who never stopped trying to fill the silence.